What if I told you that building wealth fast is not a fantasy, but a formula? A quiet algorithm the most powerful men in history have obeyed, from the Medici to Musk. The self-made millionaires and billionaires you admire didn't stumble into fortune. They engineered it by understanding a single hidden principle that bends luck itself toward those who dare. And what if I told you this principle is not reserved for the privileged, not protected by inheritance or education, but stands open to anyone disciplined enough to wield it? Most will never see it. Yet once you do, you'll understand why the rich seem to multiply their success endlessly, while everyone else stays chained to the illusion of security. By the end of this lesson, you'll not only grasp this law, but see why those who master it never fall back into poverty. What you're about to hear is not motivational fluff or a hack you'll forget tomorrow. It is the closest thing to a weapon you can carry in the war for wealth. Machiavelli once warned that men are rarely ruined by one mistake, but by their blindness to fortune's turning wheel. In The Prince, he described fortune as a woman, one who favors boldness and punishes hesitation. The lesson is clear. Hesitation is death. To build wealth swiftly, you must replace the myth of balance with the art of asymmetry, the same secret strategy that turned modest beginnings into dynasties. Asymmetric opportunity. That's the name of the law. It is the discipline of risking little while opening the door to extraordinary rewards. It's how the rich make the game unfair in their favor. The masses ignore it because they've been conditioned to worship stability, to believe wealth comes only after decades of slow, predictable labor. That illusion keeps them obedient, but as Machiavelli wrote, men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. The powerful know this. They manipulate the structure of risk itself, exposing themselves only where the upside dwarfs the cost. This isn't about gambling or reckless leaps. It's about constructing your life like a chessboard, where one decisive move can change the entire game. Picture this. If you had placed $5,000 in Amazon stock in 2001 when it traded for $5, that small seed would have become over $3 million today. Or imagine $1,000 invested in Bitcoin in 2015, now worth well over $100,000. Those numbers aren't fantasies. They're examples of disproportionate outcomes, where the downside was limited, but the potential gain stretched into the stratosphere. The elite understand this instinctively. Take George Soros, who once made $1 billion in a single day by shorting the British pound, a calculated asymmetric strike. Or consider Warren Buffett, who said, "Risk comes from not knowing what you're doing." He doesn't avoid risk, he studies it until it bends to his will. Every empire, from Renaissance merchants to modern venture capitalists, runs on this exact law. They lose small, they win big. And when they win, the reward is so vast, it covers the cost of every defeat. But the most dangerous illusion is that asymmetry exists only in investing. That is false. It's hidden in every arena of your life, in the conversation you hesitate to start, the idea you don't publish, the skill you postpone learning. Every unmade move is an unseen fortune slipping through your hands. The great men of history, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the Bezos and Arnolds of today, all mastered one rhythm. Small calculated actions, repeated consistently, until one detonates into a life-changing victory. Do not confuse this principle with manifestation or attraction rituals that promise wealth through fantasy. Machiavelli despised illusions that made men weak. He wrote that rulers must act with cold calculation, because only through action can chaos be controlled. The rich don't dream their way to fortune. They exploit structures that favor exponential reward. The poor cling to symmetry, trading time for wages, exchanging safety for slow decay. They think security is refuge, but in reality, it is a cage built from their own fear. As Machiavelli said, fortune rewards the audacious. The goal is not to escape risk, but to design it. You can lose 10 times and still rise if one victory outpaces the rest. path of wealth is not linear, it's geometric. One right decision can pay for years of failure. That's how a handful of men in every century become legends, while millions labor endlessly without escape. So before you move further, look around. The entire system, your job, your city, your routine, is structured to keep you symmetrical, predictable, slow, obedient. To see through that illusion is your first act of rebellion. The next step is to learn to identify the asymmetric doors standing right in front of you, because those who see them and act never return to mediocrity. And the next few minutes will show you not only how to find these hidden doors, but how to command them, the same way the powerful always have. The masses are taught to fear risk as if it were a curse. But Machiavelli understood that risk is not the enemy, ignorance is. Men rise from one ambition to another, he wrote. First they seek to secure themselves against attack, and then they attack others. In other words, those who stop defending and start commanding rule. The difference between the average man and the ruler of fortune is not intelligence. It's the ability to use volatility rather than flee from it. Most people think the safest path is the most stable one, the steady job, the guaranteed paycheck, the fixed schedule. But stability is the most dangerous illusion of all. The employee who trades time for comfort is always one disruption away from ruin. One company collapse, one technological shift, and decades of loyalty evaporate overnight. Machiavelli warned that whoever builds on the people builds on mud, and in modern terms, to build your future on another's structure is to build on sand. The modern safe path is simply a slower form of surrender. The rich think differently. They understand that fortune is chaos and chaos is opportunity. Volatility is the natural state of life, not an anomaly to be avoided. To resist it is to drown. To ride it is to rule. Consider the logic of venture capital. 9 startups fail. 1 explodes and repays the rest 100-fold. Jeff Bezos famously said, "Our success at Amazon is a function of how many experiments we do per year, per month, per week." Every failure was tuition for the one idea that conquered the world. This is the essence of asymmetric psychology, learning to see failure not as loss, but as leverage. The rulers of wealth do not fear losing small, they fear standing still. Elon Musk poured his last dollars into SpaceX, knowing it might fail, but he understood Machiavelli's logic. Better to stake everything on one decisive battle than to rot behind the walls of comfort. He who wishes to be obeyed, Machiavelli wrote, must know how to command. Command requires courage, the courage to endure small losses in pursuit of a great victory. Think of it like this. The peasant hides behind the walls, terrified of the storm, while the prince rides into it with a map. The storm doesn't care whom it destroys, but only the one who moves within it can shape its path. Most men will never be rich because they allow fear to dictate their movements. They panic when things fall, they hesitate when things rise. They confuse emotion for wisdom. But emotional men are easy to control. Rational men control outcomes. You cannot eliminate risk, only decide whether to suffer from it or to command it. Great investors, generals and rulers all share one habit. They choose their battlefield. Warren Buffett once said, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." That's not recklessness, it's timing. He understood the crowd's emotion is a map of opportunity. When the masses retreat, the brave advance. When others collapse in fear, the ruler plants new seeds. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. It is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. The coward thinks, waits, overanalyzes, and by the time he acts, the opportunity has already chosen someone else. Meanwhile, the bold strike early, fail quickly, adjust fast, and learn faster. This cycle is what compounds into mastery, not endless caution, but disciplined boldness. Even in loss, the powerful man gains information. Each failure sharpens his intuition, clarifies his next strike, The common man loses once and retreats forever. The prince loses a battle but wins the war. One victory pays for 10 defeats. That is the mathematics of sovereignty. Look at how the top 1% behave. Venture capitalists invest in 10 companies expecting most to fail. Movie studios fund a dozen films, hoping for one global hit. Even athletes operate this way. Hundreds of attempts for a single world record. The logic is always asymmetric. Limited downside, limitless upside. But the emotional weak cannot stomach temporary loss, so they forfeit permanent victory. The wealthy man structures his life so that volatility becomes a friend. He expects the storm, builds his ship for it, and profits from chaos while others cling to the shore. Every empire in history was forged by this same pattern. Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon, the Medici funding explorers, Rockefeller reinvesting during crashes. Each risk could have failed, but each carried an upside vast enough to rewrite destiny itself. So when you find yourself hesitating, remember this. Security is not freedom. It is dependence dressed in comfort. The fortress you think protects you is already collapsing. The true fortress is built through mastery of risk, not avoidance of it. And yet, the real power of this principle begins when you stop thinking like an investor and start living like one. Because asymmetry doesn't just build wealth, it reshapes your entire existence. Now that you understand the law, it's time to see how it breathes in the real world. The most powerful men on earth don't merely invest asymmetrically, they live asymmetrically. They design their lives so that every action carries a small cost, but the possibility of a massive return. This is why they seem to rise effortlessly. Their success is not random, it's engineered by structure. Take content creation. It follows the same pattern. Writing one book costs you months. It might sell a handful of copies, or it could change your life. One video, one podcast, one post. Each is a seed. Most die, but one might echo across millions. That single asymmetric hit can alter your reputation, your income, even your destiny. J.K. Rowling was rejected 12 times before Harry Potter turned her from an unemployed mother into a billionaire. The effort was small compared to the reward. That's asymmetry. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must build fortresses not only of stone, but of reputation. In our age, those fortresses are digital. Content, intellectual property, networks, a course, a channel, a product. Once built, they multiply without your constant effort. One piece of intellectual capital can pay you forever. The poor man complains about lacking capital while wasting his most valuable resource, time, on distractions that yield nothing. The wealthy turn time into equity, into assets that work while they sleep. History repeats this pattern. The Medici family funded artists and innovators, small sums that produce timeless returns. Leonardo da Vinci's inventions and Michelangelo's art elevated Florence's reputation for centuries. Columbus risked a voyage few dared attempt and redrew the map of the world. Centuries later, Henry Ford invested in assembly line efficiency, a gamble that made automobiles affordable to the masses and turned his name into an empire. Every leap followed the same logic. Limited downside, infinite reach. You must begin to see every decision in your own life through this lens. Moving to a larger city, for example, uncomfortable, uncertain, yes, but the potential gain in connections, ideas, and opportunities dwarfs the cost of relocation. Travel works the same way. One journey may change how you see commerce, art, or power forever. A brief encounter might introduce you to someone who opens a door you didn't know existed. Even relationships obey asymmetry. A single conversation can alter your fate. A meeting with a mentor, a partner, a co-founder. You might endure dozens of dull or fruitless encounters, but one could reshape the rest of your life. The timid fear rejection, so they avoid risk. The wise know rejection is trivial compared to the gain of one life-altering alliance. Machiavelli advised rulers to weave alliances as carefully as they build armies, because no man rules alone. The same applies here. Your network is your fortress. Books, too, are asymmetric weapons. A $20 book can contain an idea that saves you years of failure or sparks $1 million venture. Most books won't, but the one that does changes everything. Elon Musk once said he learned rocket science by reading textbooks he bought himself. One asymmetric act, learning without permission, built SpaceX. The same is true for every mentor, every course, every experiment. The return on one transformative idea pays for every unremarkable one that came before. But here's the truth few will tell you. Asymmetry demands endurance. You must plant constantly, even when you see no results. You must accept that 9 out of 10 efforts will fade, because you don't need them all to bloom. You need one. The poor look at the 9 that failed and call it waste. The powerful focus on the one that succeeded and call it strategy. Every great dynasty, from the Roman Empire to Silicon Valley, was built by men who played long enough for asymmetry to deliver its miracle. So, what happens when you start living this way? Fear fades. You stop obsessing over small losses. You no longer need immediate validation. You begin to understand the rhythm of power, sow, lose, sow again, until one seed becomes a forest. This is how the wealthy think. They do not rely on luck. They manufacture inevitability. Machiavelli taught that a ruler must act as though fortune were always shifting. By planting many seeds, you protect yourself from her cruelty and position yourself for her favor. When you start seeing life this way, every action becomes an investment, every connection a potential empire. You stop chasing guarantees and start building leverage. But even this mindset is incomplete until you learn one final truth, that fortune eventually tests every man. To survive her storms, you must not only seize opportunity, but protect it. You must build the fortress that shields your risks from destruction, the structure that lets you take bold action again and again without fear of collapse. And that's where we go next. Machiavelli once compared fortune to a violent river that, when it overflows, sweeps away everything unprepared in its path. Centuries later, the same flood is here again. Only this time, it comes as automation, artificial intelligence, and the collapse of old systems. Those who once trusted routine now find their professions dissolving. The promises of job security and retirement stability are crumbling like sandcastles before the tide. The lesson has not changed. Fortune spares no one who stands still. In a world where information moves faster than thought and industries transform overnight, safety itself has become the greatest risk. Machiavelli warned rulers not to rely on old defenses when new weapons are forged. In your life, that means adapting, not later, but now. The traditional path, study, obey, retire, is dead. The only strategy that remains is building your own fortress of income, one that funds your experiments, your risks, your sovereignty. Your fortress begins with what you can control. The wealthy call this their income machine, a structure of assets and systems that generate money even when they sleep. It could be a skill that compounds in value, a digital product that sells endlessly, or a business that scales without your presence. These are modern equivalents of the Medici banks and the Rockefeller trusts, engines designed not to make a single fortune, but to fuel a lifetime of asymmetric bets. Without this base, your life is fragile. One failed venture could ruin you. With it, you are untouchable. You can lose 10 times and recover with ease because your fortress keeps you alive. Every great empire understood this. The Romans built roads and armies before conquering. The Renaissance families built credit systems before patronage. Musk built PayPal before Tesla and SpaceX. Each fortress allowed the next war to be fought with greater freedom. The logic never changes. First secure your foundation, then play the asymmetric game. Look carefully at the times you live in. Currencies are being devalued. Governments are drowning in debt. Technological revolutions are rewriting the economy faster than universities can update their textbooks. To delay is to choose defeat. The longer you cling to symmetry, to comfort, predictability, obedience, the more the flood rises around you. But if you prepare now, if you plant the right seeds and fortify your position, the same flood that destroys others will carry you forward. That's the paradox Machiavelli understood. It is not the well-fortified city that survives, he wrote, but the well-prepared ruler. Your preparation is your portfolio of asymmetric opportunities, your network, your skills, your creations, your adaptability. Each small project, each alliance, each learned skill becomes a stone in your fortress wall. Most will be forgotten, but the few that endure will protect you for life. One decisive success can pay for a decade of mistakes. One powerful alliance can defend you from 1,000 failures. This is the mathematics of power. Limited loss, infinite reward. The question then is not whether you will face risk, you will, but whether you'll face it defenseless or armed. Every day that passes, fortune tests you. Will you plant another seed, take another chance, make another move? Or will you cling to the illusion that standing still is safe? Because standing still in this age is drowning in slow motion. So plant. Keep planting. Read the books, even if 9 offer nothing. Launch the projects, even if most are ignored. Travel, connect, create, invest. Because you don't need them all to succeed. You need the one. The asymmetric triumph that pays for everything else. That is how the rich think. That is how power multiplies. And that is how you escape the gravity of mediocrity. Machiavelli's voice still echoes across centuries. Fortune favors the bold who prepare their defenses and strike when the moment comes. So build your fortress. Keep placing your bets. Never hesitate, for hesitation is defeat. And when fortune's river rises again, you will not be swept away. You will ride its flood to dominion. The only question left is this: when opportunity arrives, will you be ready to command it?